cause it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The paupers see this mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome back to Rogue Ways, where tonight we are talking about the Lunar New Year. Happy Lunar New Year, by the way, and also the number 13 and some other things that connect with those two themes. And before we get into it tonight, I'd like to say, I hope you're dealing with the sun's impact on us lately. Okay, I hope you're doing well with it. It is intense. I showed was it last week or the week before? There was, a quarter of the sun's circumference had this giant, just like rip of a black hole through it. This is a coronal hole. I forget now what it's technically called, but this is when we get all those X flares and all of that extra EMF radiation shooting at the Earth in various levels of intensity and various types. So we've got the, plasma and all of this, just like a magnetic chaos, and our Earth's magnetosphere is like weakening at the same time that the sun is going through this height of its cycle, and so we're really intensifying things down here on Earth. And our nervous systems are electric. We're electric beings, and that's magnetic electric input coming in. And so we don't have a lot of studies on this, but it's like very apparent that it affects animals and humans and all of Earth's field, and storms and earthquakes and volcanoes. And so there's a lot of energy in the system right now. You might be dealing with that in various ways. I know some people today were saying to me, is anybody else just suddenly randomly deeply anxious for no reason? And yes, a lot of people are today. I personally today, I can feel my nerves. I have a lot of nerve issues anyways, that I've been healing more and more over the years, especially via all of the methods that you can find on my Substack. And sulfur most recently is via MSM flakes is very, very, very helpful. It's you may have heard me talk about the Walls diet before, and the sulfuric vegetables being part of what gives us nirvanic acid, which is one of the only things that actually does help us remyelinate our nerves. So if you have nerve issues, this is like the best diet for you. And then using extra sulfur or DMSO is extra good for you. So I do that, but my nerves otherwise can have all sorts of things that are not addressed by traditional medicine. And one of those I call sparkles, because otherwise I'd have to call it searing pain. Instead of calling it searing pain, I call it sparkles. It feels as though people are throwing just maybe even like a spray, a fine mist of hot scalding oil across my skin. So it'll just kind of move across in waves, and I feel prickle points of searing pain. That's been happening a lot today. And that happens for me. One of the times it happens is when the sun's energy is hitting us with a lot of intensity. So there's another example. So you might have this anxiety, you might have some nerve stuff, you might have headaches, you might have really sudden and sort of severe lethargy, or you're just or crash out and sleep for hours. Or you might have the opposite. You might have really high energy all of a sudden, and you might be needing to run around. And all of these things are helped by grounding. The earth is your friend. The earth will help you move a lot of electricity through your system more easily. Grounding mats can be helpful, but the earth itself, being on the earth itself, is actually what you want to do. So go put your feet on the earth, put your hands on the earth, hug a tree, whatever it is that you need to do in order to get some of this through. But yeah, there's another huge hole moving across the sun today. So we're going to continue to go through this for a while. On the other side of things, on the less physical side of things, the more sort of spiritual, mental, maybe emotional side of things, this energy coming through can also cause all sorts of experiences, some of them very mystical in nature. And you might be experiencing those too. A lot of people do. And you might not be sure exactly what it is. You might just be suddenly I don't know, things are kind of weird. Or you might be really clear that something's happening to me. It might be really clear that you're having what someone might even call a chakra clearing, or some people, call it ascendance sickness, even, which I don't think is like the best way to describe these things. A kundalini awakening is how some people might describe some of these things. I have the potential to receive just massive, hugely clear downloads, some people call it, where all of a sudden I am just seeing and hearing and understanding volumes of information as though they were just dropped into my brain, like a movie is playing for me about, in some cases, the history of Earth, in some cases, the future of humanity, in some cases, even more about the nature of consciousness in our universe, and all sorts of stuff. So that's also common in these times, and this is going to continue for a while. We're going to come back to this topic later tonight. It just so happens to connect with a lot of what we're talking about today. So this is the sun. This is its energy. It's not just energy. It's not just like measurable magneto, electro, like it's also spiritual consciousness and more. And that's happening. So cool. I also want to say hey to anyone who's watching on YouTube. My fledgling 4th YouTube channel hasn't been deleted yet, and that's cool. And only a couple hundred people have found it. That's okay. I don't care at all. It's honestly just there so that some people who really believe that YouTube is the only place where people exist can find me. And then everyone else knows that it's much more reliable to find me almost anywhere else, including every single podcast app that exists in all of the world. And so find me there more reliably. I don't put content on YouTube very often because they hate me so very much that I can do almost nothing and have my channel deleted yet again. And I don't want to do that. So tonight should be pretty safe. What I'm talking about tonight should be pretty safe, and it should be able to stay there. And that'll be cool if it does. So let's get into it today a little bit more directly. I would like to invite all of you to rogueways.org, where you can buy my books. You can also go to the shop. You can schedule one-on-one sessions with me. It's all here in the menu. All the things are here for you to do. I do tarot one-on-one. I do coaching and talk for spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, all sorts of topics and healing modalities. Everything's here. You can also find me on calendly.com/rogueways. That's the actual scheduling module that I use. This is just from the site. You can schedule from here too. Everything's here on the site. Rogueways.org is the place to be. If you want to, however, connect with my free articles like Sulfur Saves Lives, in which you have tons of tips on how to heal from what they say are chronic and unhealable things, then you can read about that for free. And if you want to get channeled messages like the Pleroma and the Multitude of Expression, channeled through the beings I call the spiritual ancestors, who are an interdimensional consciousness of ascended masters that all people have connected with through all of time. This is here on rogueways.substack.com as well, for those of you who want to be paid supporters of the show and the work that I do. Free subscribers, paid subscribers, all of you are welcome here at rogueways.substack.com. Thank you for all of you who are subscribed there. I appreciate you. Even if you think you're connected with me, it's good to be connected in multiple ways, because you never know who is going to block me, suppress me, delete me next. So I appreciate that. So let's get into it. Yesterday, as of this recording, was the 29th of January, 2025. And that was the Chinese New Year, or the Lunar New Year. And so we're in a new year now, according to this cycle. This, as we've talked about many years when we talk about the Lunar New Year, it can happen as early as January, it can happen as late as March, even, I want to say. There's a big range, and that's because their new year and their years are not based on the same 12-year cycle as us. It's lunar instead of solar, and so we'll get into that a little bit too. But today is the second day of the Lunar New Year, and this is the year of the snake. Last year was the year of the dragon. This is the year of the snake. Very similar, but opposite almost, really, right? We've talked about this in many shows here, Rogueways and Middle Path, that the snake is often our base natures. We talk about how the snake is used as that symbol of almost like darkness or evil, but it's not really, right? But it's down on the ground. It's down in its base form. It's non-ascended, right? It hasn't arisen yet off the ground. And so just like when we can sort of be in our lower nature and not our best selves, that would be more snake-like. It's not bad. It's just not dragon. Dragon's up in the sky flying around. Dragon has all the elements connected to it. Dragon has his wings and his claws and his everything. So they're kind of opposite. They're both reptiles, you know. But the snake is this year. I'll also say the snake is often used for actually really ascendant symbology as well. The snake is actually a symbol of our kundalini, for example, the energy that rises up through our central spiritual channel and column in order to become our ascended self. So it's a little of both, right? It is that symbol because it lays coiled at the bottom in our root, and if we awaken it, it can ascend up. And actually, you might say if you got to the crown, you would be now the dragon. So they're kind of the same, kind of opposite. I don't know that that's how the Chinese zodiac sees them. I don't really care. I'm just saying to you what I know about them for myself. And we'll see in a moment what they say about it. But that's sort of some energy that I associate with snake and with dragon. And so it is happy year of the snake to you. The snake energy, we'll get into here a little bit too before we move on. Snake is the 6th animal in the 12-year cycle of the Chinese zodiac signs, coming after the dragon and before the horse. So next year's the horse. We got some horse coming up. We're in this snake year now. The last one was 2013. So it's not just snake year, it's a wood snake this year. Because, they also have the elements, earth, air, water, fire, wood, I don't know what else, metal, if I remember correctly. And so it's wood snake. So the last wood snake we had was actually 1965. So we might have like a little resurgence of some of whatever was going on in 1965. A little bit of maybe like rebellion, who knows? A little bit of freedom oriented. Expansion. People back then were like, it's the age of Aquarius. It's the dawning of the age of Aquarius, right? And right now, people are like, it's the age of Aquarius. I was like, well, ages are very long, but it really does depend on who you talk to. And I don't believe it's the age of Aquarius yet, personally, but it will be soon. I'm going to say by 2033. We'll go there. Some people say, when I talk to Athen Comenti, use like 2,400 something, I believe, according to true sidereal astrology. Yeah, and I don't know what traditional astrology, maybe it was in the 67 according to tropical, but I don't think so. This is just like the debate between whether or not we're in the Kali Yuga still. I'm like, obviously we're in the Kali Yuga still. For me, I don't know. People are like, no, it's all been shifting. Well, it has been shifting, but we still torture people in prisons. Like we have food, things that are called food and sold as food that are actually just purely poison. Nothing of any substance or nutritional value in them at all. Like Twinkies, like cricket paste, things that harm you only and do not support your thriving. This is one of the signs of the Kali Yuga, right? If you look into the Bhagavad Gita, it gives you a literal list of things you will find in the Kali Yuga. And one of them is that food will be able to be just received and bought in a store. Yeah. So we're in the Kali Yuga for sure, in my humble opinion. But we might be on our way out of it. That seems good and true. But we're still in it for a while. I'll say again, perhaps by 2033 we'll be truly heading out of it. Debatable. All of it's debatable. There's no hard lines in this. You're allowed to dive into it and find what works for your specific experience of life and what helps you navigate yourself and become your best self. That's all that really matters in the end. If somebody tries to tell you like, oh no, for sure it's this, like, no, it is for you. It's just not necessarily for me or for someone else. It's less objective than you might imagine. That's why these symbols are repeated holofractically, so that no matter which direction you go, you will always end up back at the source. So the snake, it says, is cautious, introverted, An observer, cool and mysterious in behavior owing to their suspicious and insecure nature. Yet their armor conceals abundant sensitivity, wisdom, and passion that will surely surprise their few confidants. This is also an interesting description if you compare it to that Kundalini energy. When it's coiled at the base, it can be like that, like kind of resistant and like off, and like I don't know for sure what to connect with or what to trust. But then once it starts going, it's like, oh, this is deep. It's very sensitive. It's very passionate. So interesting how those symbols align there again with snake energy. Yep, so we're also wood snake here. We also have some lucky and unlucky things. Lucky things, the number 1, the number 8, colors red and black, directions west and south, flowers, camellia and orchid. Unlucky things, 0 and 5. Pink and purple in the direction east. So that's the snake year luck and lack thereof. Famous snakes: Kanye West, J.K. Rowling, Pierce Brosnan, Taylor Swift, Billie Eilish. She's listing a bunch of Satanists here. Like, that's interesting. John F. Kennedy, Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan, who sold his soul. How many of these people sold their soul? Probably Kanye, definitely Taylor, definitely Billie. Poor Billie Eilish. Bob Dylan, allegedly. So it's Year of the Snake. Happy Year of the Snake. We just started yesterday. We'll keep going into it. It's therefore also the Spring Festival now if you're into Asian holidays. It's a big time. Spring, New Year, good stuff. I wanted to just mention then, we have these different ways of measuring time. So you could say New Year was on the 1st of January. You could say that it's yesterday, so this Lunar New Year. You could say that it's spring equinox because that's when everything is renewed. The sun is now at least half the day, right? And we're just getting more and more, and so all the life is springing forth. And so spring equinox has also been another date that we do as New Year. We have all these different ways of measuring time, and I just thought it was interesting to note that in Rosicrucian counting, we're in year 3377 right now. It is not 2025. It is 3377, and it is 3377 until the vernal equinox, the spring equinox, and then it will be 3378. And so there's just 2 ways of counting years for you that we've got here going on. We also have the Judaic. In the Judaic calendar, we're 5,987. I want to say. I thought I had it open here, but I don't. But yeah. So we're lots of different years. Like what year is it? I mean, which system do you want to use? What would you like me to tell you the year in? Which one? But let's get into the number 12 for a second. So we use the number 12 in Chinese zodiac, the year of the snake. There's 12 animals. There's lots of 12s actually in a lot of these things. In fact, there's lots of 12s in our calendars, our days. We have 12 hours, 2 sets of 12 hours in a day. We have 12 months in a year. Why do we have all these 12s? What's up with 12? So yeah, 12 zodiac signs for the Chinese. Very interesting. So we're at Snake. Did you recognize this placemat, by the way? Because when I was young, we had a place called the Top of the Hill. I forget its real name because we just called it the Top. And so I genuinely can't remember what it was called. Just a dive, like the worst Chinese food and bar. Once I was of age and I could go drink there, I was like, this is the worst possible bar. Like, oh God, it was so beautiful. It's now something else because everything there has changed as it does. But this exact placemat was what we had in our Chinese vessel. So maybe you had the same. When I saw it, I had to use this today because it brought me all the way back to the 80s. So we're here in the snake. Like they said, next year's the horse. We also have the sheep, the monkey, the cock. That's me. The dog, the boar, the rat, the ox, the tiger, the rabbit, and the dragon. These are the people. I'm allegedly best with horses. I'm quite lucky because Johnny's a horse. So here we are, well matched. And we're connected. So there's 12 here. It might remind you of our own zodiac here in the Western world. We've got 12 as well. Very different symbols. In fact, most of these aren't even straightforward animals, right? We do have Aries, the ram. We do have Taurus, the bull. We do have Cancer, the crab. We have Leo, the lion. Scorpio, the scorpion. But everything else is like a therianthrope or, half animal, half man, or, a chimera, or like Libra. Libra is just scales, right? So we have some pretty interesting symbolism in ours, not just these animals, but very similar, 12 of them. Instead of by year, we go by month, though, right? That's not a 12-year cycle, it's a 12-month cycle. And, to be fair with the Chinese astrology, we also have down to the day, the month, the minute. You have all these different elements and all these different things, and it gets very complicated. And same with Western astrology. You can get down to like what's in your first, second, third, blah, 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 through 12th house, which planets are where, and all this stuff. And you can get very, very detailed in this too. But there's 12 in both, and that's just doesn't really make sense. Why? Why would they both have 12, even though they're based on totally different systems? Not even based one in a year, one in by month. Why 12, right? So 12, there's something to 12. There's all these things that come in 12, and there's sort of like these long whole systems. And there's reasons they correspond with our universe, right? This is actually part of the way we do tell time. This is why we get back to how many hours in the day and how many months in a year and how many years in a cycle and what is a cycle actually. And we're not even touching today on the grand cycles like the precession of the equinoxes and the grand year, which is 26,000 year cycles that also have to do with these same movements, these same symbols. We're not even getting into that. We're just talking today about the Lunar New Year and the number 12 and the number 13. So also 12 astrological signs. We also have the 12 disciples of Christ. I personally I've read the Bible multiple times, all the way through. I've read different sections of it, even more than that, for various classes and college and whatnot. And I didn't even know some of these. Like there's Andrew. There's a disciple named Andrew. There is. Bartholomew, James the Elder, James the Younger, 2 Jameses. John, Judas, Peter, Matthew, Philip, Simon, Thaddeus. Never heard of Thaddeus or Andrew. And Thomas. Doubting Thomas. Am I right? Is it Doubting Thomas? So I'm not super well versed in the disciples, but I know there's 12. And a long time ago, and you may have too, I was like, why are there 12 zodiac signs and 12 Chinese zodiac signs and 12 disciples and 12 Knights of the Round Table? Also, totally different cultures. Why do we all have 12 representatives of this one system in all of these? And I'll say it is astrotheological. Like I said, this is part of how all of humanity has told time is they've looked up at the sky and they said, okay, look, it looks like there's about 12 quadrants here and each one has a sort of symbol. And even if that eventually got morphed into a 12-year cycle, it also is okay. It still comes back to this idea that we understand. You even see a lot of these are represented in this circle. When you look up at the sky, it is a circle. Whether it's a dome or whatever, or hollow fractal oneness or a toroidal field, you look at it as a circle. You can see 360 degrees around you and the whole sky is filled. And we see this reflected here too. So we've got 12 Knights of the Round Table as well. Lancelot, Percival, Bedivere. I'm not going to read them all. Gawain, Tristan, Brunar, Hector. 12 Knights of the Round Table as well. We can just see this repeated over and over again. So 12 is just very symbolic, actually, of this cycle. So are lots of things. 4 is symbolic of a cycle. 7 is symbolic of a cycle. 8 is symbolic of a cycle. 12 is symbolic of a cycle. All of these are symbolic of different layers of the universe, of timekeeping, of totality. 10 is another number that has totality energy about it. Very interesting. But 12 is sort of like the extent of the cycles. And it's interesting too. It's mathematically important because it is more divisible than any other number under it. It's not necessarily true of every number that's divisible above 12, or right? So like that is actually somewhat significant. 12 is divisible by 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. That's a lot of divisors. So 12 is a nice whole round round number, in which to divide things as well. It's convenient. It's easy mathematically. It makes it especially easy to use in counting and long counting. The Mayan calendar used 12s as well, cycles of 12s. So calendrically, it makes sense as a number. And I had to ask AI then, because I was like, there's so many 12s. There's got to be some I'm not thinking of. And yeah, there's a lot. So here's what AI came up with about the other 12s. There's 12 Olympians in Greek mythology. These are the 12 principal gods and goddesses who resided on Mount Olympus, including Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, and Athena. There's 12 tribes of Israel. Duh. I usually talk about that when I'm talking about 12, but forgot it today. AI reminded me. Thanks, AI. Got my back. 12 imams in Shia Islam. Didn't know that. The 12 imams are spiritual and political successors to the Prophet Muhammad, sort of like the 12 apostles. The 12 Titans. In Greek mythology, the Titans were the 12 primordial deities, children of Uranus and Gaia. The 12 Labors of Hercules, a series of episodes concerning a penance carried out by Hercules, the greatest of the Greek heroes. The 12, I'm not going to say this right, Geoterlingus. This is Norse. Oh, sorry, it's Hindu. My bad. Just sounds Norse. In Hinduism, these are 12 sacred shrines dedicated to the Lord Shiva spread across India. 12 shrines dedicated to Shiva. 12 days of Christmas. This is the festive period marking the span between the birth of Christ and the arrival of the Magi, celebrated from December 25th to January 6th. So you actually you get your first present on January 25th and then each present after that. You know, the first day of Christmas and whatnot. The 12 months of the year as well, as we've said. And I'm sure there's more than this too. These are just kind of the most culturally significant, obvious examples of 12. And so 12 is, again, it's easy to divide. It's easy to use. And so we have actually built our solar calendar off of 12, even though it therefore means that we will have some months that are 28 days and some months that are 30 and some that are 31. And every once in a while, one that's 29. Even though it gets that crazy, we still were like, 12 is the number for us. Let's do 12 months for the year, because it is more easily divisible, because it is also a number that reflected back to us this sense of completion and totality, because it seemed to mirror the sky in many ways. For lots of reasons, we have this solar calendar, which is a 12-month calendar. It's also called the Gregorian calendar now, because Pope Gregory was the one who kind of solidified it, regulated it. And we had 10 months before then. It was the Julian calendar. And so we added whatever months in order to get 12. And so we've got our solar calendar. This is what we use. This is like the whole world uses this now. Yeah, yes, the Rosicrucians say it's 3377. Yes, the Jews say that it's, again, I think 5987. But the rest of the world, even the Jews and the Rosicrucians, use this Gregorian calendar, and it's 2025. And here we are in this Lunar New Year on this solar calendar system, based in 12. But there's always hidden 13s, and the hidden 13s are in every single example of 12 that we have just brought up. And they are always hidden, and they are always occulted, and they are always esoteric, and they are always connected with the subconscious or the shadow. Every time 13 is. So much so that 13 is considered an unlucky number. It's considered so unlucky that we do not have 13th floors in the United States. I mean, there might be one here or there, but I've never been on one. Have you? And I didn't even notice it. And someone pointed it out when I was a teenager, and I was like, that's crazy. I'm sure you're lying, because it doesn't make sense. And I don't think humans are that crazy. Yeah, they are. We are. We're that stupid and crazy. We won't even have a 13th floor because we think it's an unlucky number. It doesn't even really make sense. And it's definitely not unlucky, but it is hidden. And we have a fear of things that are hidden. It's occulted. And we have a deep unease with things that aren't common and known. It's esoteric. And we are terrified of our shadow, especially in the West. So So let's look at 13. There's actually this lunar calendar. That's what we're celebrating, the Lunar New Year, based on a lunar calendar. There are 13 moons in a year, and they're pretty equal number of days, actually. Right? Unlike the 28, 29, 30, 31 days that you could possibly have in the solar calendar months, you have exactly 28 days in every month. And you know exactly when they start and they stop, because the moon tells you, because the moon is right there and it can't lie. And there it is. And it's the same every time. And it's exactly cut up and it's perfect. And the moon represents our subconscious, and it represents the feminine, which is the void, which is the emptiness, which is the darkness. And so 13 is associated with that all via the moon. And the moon can't help it. It's not the moon's fault. But the moon, especially if you accept what we're told about the moon, is it doesn't produce its own light. It only reflects light. So it is a dark body, whereas the sun, the solar body, is radiating light all the time. As we talked about at the beginning of the show, it can affect us in very many ways. Moon isn't doing that. Moon also affects us. But it affects women more than men. For maybe obvious reasons, our cycles, right? Our menstrual cycles are often aligned with the moon. And women are associated, again, with the feminine, the negative, the void. Not negative, bad, just negative, empty, the receiver, the yin. And the moon's also associated, again, with subconscious, because it's not reflecting its own light. It just has no light to give, right? And so it is emotional as well. It affects everyone emotionally. I mean, like, you might not notice it, but this is where we get lunatic. This is where we get the idea that is true for anyone who's ever worked in an emergency room, that people go crazy on a full moon and the emergency room becomes packed. Police know it too, because on a full moon, all of a sudden they have more arrests, more violence, more crazy shenanigans. So emotional and feminine and void and empty and all of these things associated with the moon for a good reason. It is actually what it is associated with. It's what it does. It's how it's connected with us. And it does not give off its own light. So we have 13 moons in a year, and we have a lunar calendar based on this. It's not so occulted or esoteric, but there's plenty of people who have never heard of that. There's plenty of people who don't know it. There's plenty of people who don't get it. You can say Lunar New Year all you want. People are like, huh? When you say Chinese New Year, they're like, oh, yeah, China does that. That makes sense to me. Lunar New Year, I'm not really sure, right? So it's still a little bit disconnected to our conscious awareness. And we have 13 hidden lots of places. We actually have 13 of King Arthur and his knights. When you add King Arthur, there's 13. Why wouldn't we count King Arthur? He's the head of the whole thing. He's at the table with them. He's in the round table. Here we are together. King Arthur and his 12. You know there's 13, but you just don't think about it, right? We don't think about it. We just say the 12 knights. King Arthur and the 12 knights. Well, yeah, the 13 people who represented that whole group as one group. The 13 of them. One of them a little bit different. One of them transitioning from one state into another, right? One of them a little bit elevated. We're not necessarily saying better than, because especially in this example, we're at the circle together. We're all here together in the round table. It's literally what it represented. King, sure, but we're all at the table. What do we got here? But still a little different, 13th one is a little bit different. We also, in the traditional Western zodiac, don't recognize, but do have, and in this image you may see it here where my cursor is moving, Ophiuchus. He's kind of not lit up in this image to signify that he's not counted in the zodiac. He actually is on the ecliptic line. He's actually right there where we count up the divisions in the sky and what represents them. He's just not shown. We don't count. He's not in any traditional astrologies. He's not in any of them. Except True Sidereal, I think, is the only one that counts him. They're the only one that counts him. And it's fun. If you haven't yet, you can go to my site under the Favorite Things tab, rogueways.org, Favorite Things tab. You can click on the True Sidereal Astrology link, and you can go get a free birth chart of your true sidereal chart, and it's going to be different from your tropical chart. It's going to be different from the chart that you know, unless you've specifically done true sidereal. It's not the same as sidereal. It's not the same as Vedic. It's different from both of them. And it will be a different chart for you. And you may find, especially if you're in your later half of life, you may find that it fits you better now. That's what I found. My other chart fit me perfectly for the first 40 years or so. And now this chart fits me perfectly. So very interesting. And Ophiuchus is this 13th sign. There's this whole question, right? Was he intentionally cut out? Again, he is slightly kind of like off. Like the rest of them might be in a straight line, and he's like kind of above and an adjacent kitty corner too, however you want to think of it. But he's still on the ecliptic line itself. He's just not like centered on it like the others are. So you could say like, no, they weren't like trying to malign Ophiuchus. They weren't trying to hide him from people. They were just saying like, he doesn't really fit with the rest. And he's so small. It's a small little window of days. He's the smallest sign in the sky on this ecliptic line. And so, so like, let's just push him out, sort of like the 13th month, sort of like, hey, it's easier to do the solar year. It actually works out better for us than, we're always at the same point in the year with the same month. Whereas the Lunar New Year, like I said, you might have it starting in January, you might have it starting in March. It's a big difference. It's not always the exact same part of the year. They're saying it's the spring festival right now. Is it spring where you're at? No. So it kind of makes sense. It doesn't have to be a conspiracy. It doesn't have to be that people were trying to oppress or reject something. But it is also interesting that the rejection of the lunar calendar, the rejection of Ophiuchus, the ignoring of the 13th and some of these things we're going to look at is also corresponding with the period of time in which we fell into a dark age and repressed some other things and have not done much shadow work and haven't looked at our shadows and have ignored ourselves and have fallen into great amounts of disease because of it. So, yeah, intentional or not, it also makes sense. It's energetically appropriate what we're experiencing and what we are seeing in our culture, in our symbols, and otherwise. So Ophiuchus, was he oppressed on purpose? I don't know. It doesn't matter. But here he is. He's definitely come back into our consciousness now, right? On the cusp of the age of Aquarius. You might say on the cusp of our exit from the dark age. Interesting timing to come back. Interesting timing for the number 13 to sort of start to be reclaimed via these types of shifts in our ideas, our conceptions. We have 13 even with Jesus. Jesus is the 13th. There's 12 apostles in Jesus. Jesus was the same as King Arthur. He didn't say, oh, I'm better than you. I'm different than you. I'm the one, you aren't. No, he was like, we're all at the table together. You're all here with me. We're all doing the same work. You're the same as me. There's no difference. That's in fact most of his message. It's like, follow me. We're the same. I'm not different than you. 13th one. Little bit different? Sure. A little bit different. A little bit, not better. A little bit different. Just like Ophiuchus, he's like still on the line. He's a little bit above it. A little bit outside, but still connected. A little bit beyond the norm, but still normal. And this is 13 in general. We even have, with Chinese astrology, a possible 13th. There are scholars and people who have studied Chinese mythology. And while it may have been so distant, it is nearly incredibly forgotten. It's connected with the time of the Yellow Emperor, and it is the shadow dragon. What? I didn't know this until today. The shadow dragon. Yeah, this is kind of a silly artwork, but but it's talking about the shadow dragon. Literally the shadow of the dragon. What an exactly perfect representation of the 13th thing being in shadow, esoteric, occulted, forgotten, cut off. Shadow dragon, here we are. And the shadow dragon has legends. Again, it goes back to the Yellow Emperor's time. The Yellow Emperor himself, if you go deep enough, if you dig deep enough, if you get the right anthropologist like Robert Sepper, then you start to see the Yellow Emperor isn't even Chinese. Yellow Emperor is what we would call Aryan. Yellow Emperor was called Yellow Emperor because the Yellow Emperor had yellow hair and blue eyes. not well accepted necessarily for all of Chinese culture, but seemingly true. Yellow Emperor and the Shadow Dragon are connected. So a time so distant, we had a different pole star. A time so distant that the Arctic Circle was livable, Antarctica was livable. A time so distant, cataclysm that we don't even have record of transformed the entire globe. That time seemed to have a shadow dragon as part of the 13 as well. Therefore, we would have a 13-year cycle and things would be totally different. And again, we've forgotten, we've cut it off, we've put it into shadow dragon. So pretty fascinating. There's not a lot on this. Very, very interesting. But again, it's the time for it to come back. It's the time for it to be reclaimed, just like a fucus, just like remembering that 13 is not in any way negative, not in any way unlucky. It's just a number. In fact, its meaning is so beautiful. Is a perfect time for it to come back to us. So Shadow Dragon, we welcome you. We also have 13 connected with magic, with witchcraft. You needed 13 witches to have a coven. You needed 13 witches to have the most powerful sort of magical circle that you could have. So 13 is very important there too. You could say, again, this is because of the moon. This is because of how you can cut up the sky. This is because of how humans see themselves in nature and reflected in nature. Yes, absolutely. And then you can also start to see like why maybe some of this might have been oppressed. If it was oppressed on purpose, you can see what you're cutting out. You're cutting out the Jesus or the Christic energy. You're cutting out the kings, King Arthur, kingly energy. You're cutting out magic itself. You're cutting out the understanding of the integration of the shadow and its purpose in your psyche and in your stepping into your highest self. You're cutting out this connection with our subconscious. You're cutting out a fucus, the healer, the transcendental healer. Again, a fucus is one of the weirdest signs in the Western zodiac when you count him. Unlike the rest, he is almost like a Christic sort of energy in himself. So all of those things, suppressed, oppressed, or just forgotten, doesn't have to be intentional. It can be that it sort of wanes out of existence, especially when we're in certain zones of the universe or certain ages, like a dark age. And it can be that that's why it also starts to come back to us, because we're coming back up into awareness, coming out of a dark age. We're coming out of the lack of integration of our shadow and our subconscious and back into full awareness of ourselves. And that's what 13 really does represent. You know, 13th, Friday the 13th is always said to be unlucky. There's so many reasons why. One of those is the Templars. You know, they were stabbed in the back, killed, brought down on a Friday the 13th of 07 or something. They also say Judas was the last one to come to the Last Supper. So that's unlucky because he was the betrayer. All these betrayals connected with 13, right? Loki was said to come to another, 12-person meal in Norse mythology, their sort of Last Supper. And Loki showed up and ruined everything. He was the 13th. And Loki's the trickster. Judas is the betrayer. So there's all this trickster, betrayer, sort of backstabbing sort of energy also associated with 13. But we'll say, and I've said it before, and you've probably heard it unless you haven't seen any of my episodes about the purposes of darkness. You can see the latest one over on Gnostic TV, gnostictv.com, free for everybody. You can go check that out. But there is a purpose to the trickster. There is a purpose to what we're calling dark or evil. There is a purpose to what is the shadow, the unconscious. It actually serves us. And Jesus knew this. This is why he's like, oh, I've forgiven you before you even do it. I forgave you before you even stab me in the back. I don't care. Right? We needed this to happen, actually. This is how it was supposed to happen. If not you, then who? Loki, same, right? Triggers things that are meant to happen. Triggers growth in all the other heroes and all of the other energies that had to happen. It had to be instigated somehow. So lots of reasons why we say 13 is unlucky, but it's not really the number. There's nothing unlucky about it. And the things that we generally call dark or that we imagine don't serve us, they all do. Again, it doesn't mean you just allow people to hurt you. It doesn't mean you become evil because you don't see a difference between good or evil. That's not what this means. It means that you understand that even the things that seem like hardships or darkness, they still serve your highest flourishing. So we need 13. It's like, especially if you're going to bring us our trickster, right? Especially if you're going to bring us the catalyst for our awakening. Yeah, bring it on, right? This is an alchemy too. Like, you've got to burn everything down to ashes before you can get to its essence. Let's go. The darkening is a good thing. It's a necessary step. And there's all these good 13s too. And we just ignore those ones. We're like, yeah, no, but like, let's just focus on the bad and the unlucky ones. We have 13 Buddhas. It's good. I mean, all the other 13s we've seen honestly are good too, but we just like look at those few that we think are negative and we made this us something to not have a 13th floor about. We have 13 Buddhas. We have 13 heavens in Aztec mythology. 13 levels of heaven. We have this idea in Judaism that when you're 13, you become a man. This is the transition point. You're no longer what you were. You're something new. So here's another layer of 13 being this thing where it's like now things are different, right? Jesus, a little different. King Arthur, a little bit different. Ophiuchus, a little bit different. Oh, you turn 13, you're a little bit different. And it is true. You talk to a 12-year-old, you talk to a 13-year-old, like things are different. 13, something's different. 12, pretty complete, pretty unified, pretty easily divisible, good timekeeping number. Really complete, long unit, long, bigger cycle. And then 13 changes it all. 13 brings it to a different level. 13 makes you a man. It is actually the bridge between the thing that came before and the thing that comes after. It is the transition point, 13. 12 is the complete and the total, and 13 is like, well, then let's go. Let's connect you to the next cycle. And so again, it's a good time for 13 to be reclaimed. It's a good time for us to think about 13s. It's a good time to think about the things that were labeled as the 13th and associated with that energy. I had this number that was happening over and over in my life. You know, you get angel numbers, you get 1s or 2s or 333, 444, 555, all these things. Mine was 1358 over and over and over in ways that were ridiculous. I mean, like, it was I was like, I think I live in a movie now. Like, this is not even possible. 1358. It's not even a number. You know, 333, sure. 1358, like what? It was actually more intense than that. It was 135813. I asked somebody, I went on their show a long time ago. It was like Rebel Radio, or so I don't remember what the show was called. And one of the guys on there was a pretty advanced numerologist. And I said, okay, cool. Because he'd do long strings of numbers and he'd have like this whole thing on it. And I said, okay, what about this one for you? 135813. And he said, oh, that's the number of Jesus. And I was like, what? Oh, okay. So there was Jesus, right? Over and over again. The 13th. It started with 13. So it's even embedded somehow. I mean, I don't know what his reasoning was. Again, everybody has a different system of numerology. There's like 7,000 versions of numerology. So you just got to pick the one that works for you and go with it. 13, also embedded in the number of Jesus. And so the thing that connects us to the next thing that's coming, the thing that shows us, okay, that previous cycle, that one is done. I'm here to be the renewer. I'm here to be the redeemer. I'm here to be the creator of what comes next, or the instigator, or the catalyst. And sometimes I come in the form of a Loki, and sometimes I come in the form of a Jesus. Sometimes I'm a king, and sometimes I'm going to stab you in the back. Sometimes I'm an Ophiuchus. I'm a healer. And always I'm the thing that is teeing you off for your next round about the cycle of 12, right? 12 cycles of 12, 144, 144,000. We can go all sorts of directions with this. And this is what I do with numerology. I don't really care at all what any book or any person who studied it has to say. I will read it and say, that's interesting. And no matter what, just like everything else in my life, I will say, what is my experience of it? And what does that say to me? What does nature show me about it? And what does that say to me? Because in the end, it doesn't actually matter what you think the number 1 means. It means something to me, and it will trigger me to think or feel or be in a certain way. And that is all that will ever have mattered. So it's not solipsistic. It is actually deeply nuanced observation, and it is gnosis. And that is the only true knowing we ever get to have. We can read 10 million books. We can take any authority we want, and we can take all their knowledge and pretend it's ours. It will never matter until we know it in ourselves. And to know it, you have to have experienced it and lived it. I now know 135813 means something beautiful, transcendental. Someone told me it means Jesus. I say maybe, but I know what it means for me because I lived the series of repetitions of it and that time in my life and what it meant. And that's what I know. You couldn't tell me anything otherwise. If you tried to tell me, for example, that it meant something about destruction or negativity or sickness or illness, I'd say, well, that's bullshit, because it was also beautiful and productive and full of abundance and manifestation and magic. So this is where you want to get with anything in your life. So this is also why I like to do these explorations, because I haven't told you exactly what 12 means. I haven't told you exactly what 13 means. I've told you a million examples of what 12 seems to represent and a million examples of what 13 seems to represent. And you get to carry with you whatever of that works for you. And then someday you will have, if you haven't already, a series of experiences that cements it for you. And you're like, oh, now I know that's what 12 meant. That's what it means. And so maybe we're in this place right now where we're on the 13th or going into the 13th of something. Our 13 is coming back. Our shadow is coming back up into integration. We are reclaiming things that are occulted, esoteric, or seem to have been lost. Nothing ever is. And here we are integrating it all and ready to move into what is next, which is different than what came before. And it's interesting, if we get back to the Lunar New Year, right? Cycles of 13. This is Judaic. In this case, it tells us right here. 5785 is the year, Jewish year right now. Hebrew calendar, 5785. According to this, also by the year 6000, that's when the Messianic age will have begun. This is the return of Christ, the return of the Messiah. Oh, sorry. I don't know that they say it's the return of Christ. I'm calling it that. Whatever they think the Messiah is going to come by the year 6000 to them. So we have 215 years for that to happen. They don't say it couldn't happen right now. It could happen right now. It just has to happen by 6000. So, we're in like the cusp of that at least. We're moving towards that at least. So it's interesting to me. 13 is coming back where the shadow is being reintegrated. So we're remembering things like a fucus and the shadow dragon and these things, reclaiming the energy of 13, understanding its link from a past cycle into a new cycle as the bridge between them. Then maybe this is part of it, right? It's interesting that it seems to line up. Year 6000, I had never heard of this until today. So by the year 6000, again, the next 215 years or so, then we'll be in the Messianic age, according to the Jews. And according to Satya Sai Baba, who I did not know before, we've only got about 8 years before the Messiah returns, before, in this case, what we're calling Christ consciousness returns. And Christ consciousness returns at this time, not as a single person, but as multitudes, as the 144,000, all reaching Christ consciousness at once. Can you imagine? I don't think you can. And I don't know that this is recorded anywhere except my own mouth, my own videos. Like, the people who watch me regularly may be so sick of hearing this this story. When I tell it to people in one-on-one sessions, if it comes up, I don't just spend sessions telling people stories, but if it comes up or for some reason it's guided to come through, I always ask first, have you heard me tell this story before? Because I don't want to bore you. But I'm happy to bore you, dear audience member, if this is the 700th time you've heard this story. But I didn't know who Satya Sai Baba was. And I went to a talk I didn't mean to go to, in a place I didn't mean to be, in a place I didn't want to be, and at a talk I didn't really want to be at either. At an event that I actually looked down on and judged heavily with all my heart. Really disliked it. It was just a spiritual, convention. I still look down on them. I'm so sorry. And so I was invited to this talk. I went to this talk. It was a talk about reflexology. Reflexology is rad. It's very helpful if you don't know anything about it. It's literally about like pushing on acupuncture points on your own body in order to experience health benefits. There's books on it. There's diagrams. It's cool. It's one of the like lowest level, entry level spiritual skills, I'd say, right? It's not even spiritual. It's actually very, very materialist. But like for some reason, in materialist science, we're not allowed to understand reflexology. So we have to classify it as like alternative and spiritual. It's like ridiculous. So anyways, one of the lowest level sort of spiritual topics or skills, which is fine. I'm just like letting you know, nothing high level should have happened in this talk. Nothing in any way, even close to like ascendancy or like transformational anything should have happened in this talk. It's the most boring thing. So I'm sitting there listening to this guy who I was talking to earlier, have a whole different story about. He's a really cool guy. And I see a light ball come through the wall, and I am very used to light balls. I'm very used to interacting with light balls. I'm very used to interacting with them because those are the transdimensional, interdimensional, spiritual entities that I now refer to as the spiritual ancestors, who are also ascended masters is another way you can refer to them. And that's who I've been interacting with my whole life. So I'm not surprised. The only surprising thing to me is that it's happening with a bunch of other people around. There are not other people around generally when I'm interacting with these beings. It has happened, but it is rare. And it is definitely not with people I don't know. So when it has happened with other people around, there are people who are very close to me, not random strangers. And now I'm in a room of random strangers and a light ball has come through the wall. And I think, oh my God, maybe I misjudged this whole thing. if light balls are coming, if Merkabahs, if consciousnesses and their Merkabahs are coming here, something else is happening here than what I thought was happening here. Because I thought this was a boring talk about reflexology with some really, really like normie people, not a place where Merkabahs would come. And then this Merkabah dropped into Guy's head, and then Guy shook, and then his whole mannerism changed, his voice changed, and then he started like lecturing us. And it was intense energy. It was like his aura changed. I see auras. His aura was suddenly just like golden blaring light, and his eyes were golden blaring light, and he was talking all this, and I was like floored. I have never seen one of these come into someone's body before. Ever. And he's saying, soon the time will come where things will become very hard and very dark on Earth. And things will get worse and worse and worse. He said this will start in 2020. This happened in 2017, I believe, 2018. And they will get darker and darker, and they will get worse and worse. He said, you may fear during that time that I have left you. I have not. I will be with you the whole time. And things will get harder and harder, and do not fear. For by 2033, Christ consciousness will return to Earth, and your troubles will be over. It was a bit longer than that. That's the Cliff Notes version. And then the guy shook, and the light bulb popped out of his head, and it flew away. And voice changed, aura changed, eyes changed, light bulb gone. And I'm like looking around, I'm like, is this normal to these people? No, I've since understood, and I knew kind of then as well, and I just know it more now, that there are things that can happen right in front of people's faces, They don't even know what's happening. Right in front of them, they have no idea what's going on. Wild things can happen and people won't even perceive it because they can't. They can't take it in. They can't understand it. They may have heard what he said. They had no idea that it was coming from this man you see the picture of here. They thought it was the guy that was standing in the room with us. He even said, that wasn't me. That was Sai Baba. This is the first time now that I've heard Sai Baba's name. Sai Baba didn't say his name when he started talking. He just started talking. He just had the message to give and then he was gone. He's got stuff to do. So he said that was Sai Baba. And then he starts talking about Sai Baba. This wasn't to talk about Sai Baba. Sai Baba is not on the list of topics. This is a half-hour talk, if I remember correctly, maybe an hour. Starts talking about Sai Baba, tells us all these stories about Sai Baba. I'm still just sitting there like, that just happened right here? Nobody here cares? Freaking out internally. And again, they would have cared. I don't think they know. I don't think they saw the light ball. I don't think they understand why he shook. And I don't think they see auras. I don't think they registered the eye change. I don't think they registered the voice change. I think they just thought he's a weirdo and this is a weird talk. I mean, because now I know even more about the people who go to these things, and they're not the type of people who generally even understand what a Merkaba is, or that you can channel directly beings like this, or that they can pop into your body and talk through you like that. And I don't think they understood that. So 2020, so that was a couple years out, right? I was like, I don't know, we'll see. Even then, I'm still skeptical. Because I'm like, I don't know whose light ball that is. I don't know what timeline I'm on. I don't know what changes things maybe between now and then. Who knows? And then 2020 got here and, oh, didn't it get dark? And so I was like, well, darn. Actually, I mean, I'm kind of sad that whole thing was true because now I've got 13 years of the struggle. But we're 5 years in now. And we got 8 years left of the 13. And it's perfect that it's a 13-year cycle that he brought up because we're talking about 13 and how by the end of that 13, we will actually be in a new age and we will have seen the return of Christ consciousness. I still skeptical, to be honest. I can't be any other way. This is part of why I get to interact with these beings because they know that I don't just believe them. I probably should, and I don't. And I do more and more. I do better and better all the time. But I start from a place of going, maybe, prove it. Don't believe you. And so I think that's part of why I was also in that way asked to share this message with people when I find the opportunity to do so, and why you've heard me tell this story multiple times if you've been here long enough. And also I like to tell it so we remember 2033 is not that far away. Even if shit got real bad, it's not that long. 8 years, nothing. Especially if you're as old as me, you're starting to be like, years are like water. They're gone. There they go. Goodbye. It's 2025, right? Like, it's been fast. If you're younger, you're probably like, what, 8 years? And if you're even older than me, you're probably like, oh yeah, we got this. This is nothing. Bring it. It's quick. So it might get darker, it might get harder. Again, like he said, you might, talking to you now, you might fear you've been abandoned. Oh God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus said. But you haven't been, and you won't be. And more importantly than that, you carry the light with you. It's the whole point of you being here. It's why you're here at this time. As I've said a million times too, way before I saw Satya Sai Baba jump into a guy's head and tell me a story, I thought to myself, well, this is surely the end of times. Most of my life, I've been saying this to myself. I thought it was coming in 2000. I thought it was coming in 2020, 2012. Like we're 2025. It hasn't. But this is why I came. Each time I thought so, I was like, well, I mean, this is the coolest time to have seen then, right? If I'm going to live, may as well live during the wildest times of history. So here we are. We get to ride this out together into the sunset of the 13th year, 13th month, 13th year, 13th hour, 13th day. The 13s, they've got us in the cycle, and we are making the bridge to the new world. That is the Christ consciousness returns. It is going to be different than it ever has been. It's returning now in force, in numbers. Better than ever, you might say. And also, like, the pressure's off. Can you imagine being like the chosen one? Just one? There's like 7 billion people here. Just one of us is supposed to, like, come on. So it's a lucky one. It's a lucky 13. It's a lucky return of Christ consciousness because we get at least 144,000 of us. I said 144 million. Let's go. In the meantime, before 2033, if you want to connect more deeply, if you want to connect with some of those spiritual ancestors, we're going to do just that in Crestone, Colorado this summer solstice 2025. Crestone is amazing. It is one of the most powerful spiritual places I've ever been in my life. I've been to 30 countries. I've been to sites of significance in all of them. I've been to where Mary, mother of Jesus, died. I've had transcendental experiences at many of them. Crestone, it's like, it nearly takes the cake. It's a pretty impressive spiritual energy place. It has converging ley lines. It has this sacred grandfather mountain that I have a very special relationship to myself, as do the spiritual ancestors. It's in a mountain range called Sangre de Cristo. That means blood of Christ, dude. That's the mountain range we're going to be on. That's where Crestone is. It is above one of the largest deposits of crystal in the world. Ley lines, crystal deposits, sacred grandfather mountains, blood of Christ mountains. This place is off the hook. It's gorgeous as well, just naturally. I mean, if you just came here to sit silently in the woods the whole time, it would still be worth your money because this place is epically beautiful. So deeply powerful. Everything we do as a group is always powerful, even when it's just on Zoom. So you can imagine when we're here together in this place, it's going to be pretty epic. Like I said, you're going to have some meetings with the spiritual ancestors if that's what you choose to do. You don't have to come with us when we go out in connection with them at night around the fire, which you see pictured here. But you can come join us there and connect with them, see them for yourself. You can decide for yourself if you think they're UFOs and aliens, or you think they're interdimensional intelligences that I call the spiritual ancestors. You decide. You're going to get food, 3 meals a day. We're going to get access to all this beautiful outdoor space. We have these beautiful settings. We have all sorts of things we're going to be doing. There is the Grandfather Mountain, and all of this is here on my site. If you want to come, there's still spots available. This is at rogueways.org, and you can just click on retreat, and it'll tell you all about it. You can also just go to the shop and buy your spot, and that's also there in the shop. So that is the big moment of this year. All the tarot I've done for people this year is interestingly high energy around that point of the year too. So I'm sure there's a reason why I've been called to lead this at the summer solstice here on one of the most powerful spiritual places on earth. And I hope you want to come be a part of it. I'm sure there's a powerful reason for it. And if you feel called to do it, I'm sure there's a powerful reason for that too. So let's do it together. If you feel like you are called, then come be with us. Got a handful of people now. A great group of people. I couldn't ask for a better group of people. You guys know who you are. You're the best. So I'm very excited for that. But I want to encourage you too, just because I don't know, some people I think feel like they have to know everyone who's coming or something like that. I don't know. You can just come, be yourself. Like, it's just a retreat. It's cool. But anyways, if you want to talk to me more about it, you can also contact me through my site, and we can talk about how it's going to be or how you're feeling about it. A lot of people are coming and bringing their friends, right? Because I understand that too. If I was going to go to a retreat, it might be somewhat overwhelming to go alone, even though you won't be alone there. So yeah, bring a friend. Even better. Right? The more of us, the merrier. Summer solstice energy in one of the most powerful places. I just can't wait. So I keep bringing it up. I will be going deeper into and doing an episode just on Crestone soon, because even if you aren't even interested in coming, it is a fascinating place. So we'll talk about Crestone, Sedona, and some other places of power and why they're places of power and what that sort of means in an episode coming up here. And until then, just think about 12. Think about 13. Think about moons. Think about suns. Think about bringing those things together. The Luna solar calendar is the weirdest one of all. Lunar calendar, solar calendar, Luna solar calendar. Merge the 12 and the 13. And then consider also, is 13 unlucky for you? I think it's a number of power. I think it's one of the greatest numbers of power, and that's part of why we have been enticed to forget, or not encouraged to remember it, at least until now. Now we're reclaiming it. Now we're going into the bridge of the 13 that takes us into the new age. I'll see you there. And until then, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Grab any pencil, give it potential. I'm heaven essential, get existential. I don't flip-flop, I hip-hop, and eventually you'll come to see the master of the sentence I've come to be. Come to business, come to butthead. I want to make the streets flood, the blood red. I'm the sickest, I'm the wickedest. I'm the one you call when you need to flip this, rip this place down to the fucking studs. Blast so bright among all these fucking duds. They sit back thinking that they can rock with me. You like a rookie cause you rock so sloppily, and what you think you got ain't so hot to me. So take it back to the lab for a lobotomy, bitch. What you think you got? You ain't Biggie, you ain't Tupac. Too many MCs on the street right now. Some of them can't take the heat right now. Some of them don't know what hip-hop's about. Aboard your ship and turn it on now.
I'm guessing that's the bad guy?
I'll bust you up with my arms crossed, projecting omega beams. You could wield the meta piece, smoke it faster than bodega weed. Keep dropping the dang shit, we blow the loudest. Dangerous as West Bank housing. Yeah, I'm bloody arrogant, cause I've been tearing shit before rappers mumbled and flaunted their merriment. Virulent resident pointed out embarrassments. When it comes to the masters, I'm pale in comparison. Enough about my tone, call me Yeti or unknown. Using my government can slug us to the fucking dome. Style remains lethal, without a reboot or a sequel. You're in our cathedral where nothing is peaceful. Weasels get skinned and hanged up as trophies. I'm one ugly motherfucker when I go full re-roll these cadavers in a rug and dispose of them. Won't see us closing in, watch me explode the sim. Beam this red shirt back to its maker. Leave this dread work to those with the flavor. They ain't feeling what this culture is all about. Aboard your ship and burn the bitch down.